1963 in Oak Lawn, Illinois, which is a suburb just southwest of the city of Chicago. At that time, Oak Lawn was pretty far out. It was almost like a little bit of country in its own way, but it really wasn't because it was so close to the city. And the hospital I was born in was called Christ Community Hospital. It had been built, I think, July of 1963. It had opened, so I was one of the first babies born there. And now it's a sprawling complex, and Oak Lawn is really just almost another part of the city because the city has kind of grown all around it. So from being like out, it was almost like out in the country. I remember even as a kid, it seemed far. But that's where I was born. It's where the doctor was. So I was the only one of five that was born in that hospital. Everyone else was born in a hospital that was about 2 miles away. But for some reason, I went 2 miles further. I was born. We lived in Chicago on the south side of the city, near 83rd and Winchester was the street, which was kind of far south and west in the city of Chicago. I lived with I was the youngest of five, and then my parents, and we lived in at the time, which seemed like a really big house, but now it really wasn't when you think about it, because I think we had only three bedrooms, and all the girls were in one, and the boys were in another, and my parents had a third. And like I said, I was the youngest of the five, so we were being 5 year difference between, I think, my next oldest sibling and myself. I probably don't recall as much stories as they do. It's more I learned from them telling me that. So, and by the time I was really remembering enough, my brother was 18 and he went to Vietnam. So I kind of was only, what would I have been, like 4 or 5. So I really didn't remember much of him growing up at all. And then my oldest sister at that time had started college right about then, so she went away. And so I don't have a lot, of really remembrances from that, but but we were, still close knit, I think, and my parents were loving. My mom didn't work until I was in about eighth grade, and then she went and worked in a clothing store. My dad worked every day. Sometimes, and then when we were getting ready to go to college, I remember he'd work like Saturday nights too to make more money. He was a pressman, which was for different companies, making newspapers, doing the printing for different things, and worked down near downtown Chicago. And he would work, like I say, Monday through Friday, and then they would take extra work on like Saturday nights and travel to like Hammond, Indiana, and different places to do extra work to make a little bit more money. So we were probably traditional Irish Catholic. My mom was born in Ireland. She was born in Northern Ireland, which for a Catholic was unique. When she came over, she was 4 years old, and she was born in 1926. So that was 1930 when she came over, and they came over to Chicago. And one of the stories she always told was the nun at the local Catholic school, when they were signing up, found out their hometown they were from, and said, "Oh, we don't take your type here in school." My mom remembers that as a kindergartner. So but we were very, like I say, probably traditional Irish Catholic. Went to church every Sunday, probably at the same time, like 10:30, I think it was. We're in a very, very big parish in the city of Chicago, Little Flower. It had, I forget how many masses, but sometimes three masses going on at the same time. The church was so big, they had a regular church, a church in the basement, and then another one. So huge, this huge school, grade school with probably 1,200 to 1,500 kids, and then they had their own high school also, which was pretty unique back then. But by the time I think I was in fifth grade, high school had to close just because of changing demographics and everything, and we moved just slightly. We moved probably about 2 miles away, and for the first time, I went to a public school, which was different when I was just because it was within about a half a block of our house. So from fifth grade to eighth grade, I went to a public school, which was fine. Everyone, it was not really that much of a change, because we also then went at night, 1 week a night for CCD, which was religion classes, and kept up with the church and all that. And then when Oh, and then one other thing, I guess, growing up, I remember as far as traditions was every Sunday after Mass, we would go visit grandparents. My mom's parents were still both alive. They were both born in Ireland. They lived in Bridgeport, which was south, little part of the city by White Sox Park in Chicago. And I remember every Sunday we would all pack in the car, whoever was there, and we would go down and we'd have dinner. And my grandma would give us these little orange pieces of candy. That was the big treat. They were green leaves and orange slices. And she was hard to understand. I remember that as a kid too. She had a really tough Irish brogue, so we had a hard time understanding her always. But and they seemed so old. I mean, really at the time, and they really probably weren't. But so that would be our whole Sundays, and we would go and spend all Sunday there. And then they probably passed away, my grandma, when I was in about eighth grade. And my grandfather, which was my father's father, he lived not too far from us either. So we would visit him quite often, but not as traditional as every Sunday or anything. And he probably passed away in that same period of time also. And then my last remaining grandparent passed away in 1994, right after our first son was born. Our son was born, Matt, and I think it was like 3 weeks later he died on July 1st, 94. So I remember, obviously him for a long time. And he was a long time Chicago Cub employee, which was hard for all of us growing up on the South Side because we all loved the White Sox. And he was a lifetime Cub employee. So, when he died, he had a write-up in the paper about a long-time Cub employee and all the things about that, which was kind of neat. And he got a special proclamation by the city and different things. So how did I decide where to go to high school? When high school came around right at that time, in Chicago, it's if you're Catholic, you tend to there's a lot of Catholic high schools. There's also a lot of public schools, depending on where you live, but mostly everyone I knew growing up, we were all, even the kids who went to public grade school with me, we were all vast majority were going to Catholic high schools, and there were probably, for me, about 3 or 4 I could have chose that were near my house, within a couple of miles. My father and my brother went to St. Rita, which was about 4 or 5 miles at the time from my house, and I would have had to take a bus, which my brother decided to go there by walking to a corner on the test day, because you would take a test, and he decided if the bus was going north, south, east, or west, the first bus that would come, he would either get on a bus going north and he would go to St. Rita, get on a bus going south and go to Brother Rice, get on a bus going east and go to Leo, or get on a bus going west and go to St. Lawrence. And as all his friends stood there in amazement, the bus came and it was going north, and he got on it, and that's how he went to St. Rita. I had a little bit more of I guess, a traditional decision-making process. Mine was if I wanted to go to St. Rita, St. Lawrence, no one wanted to go to Marist, even though my kids went there. Or what was the other one? St. Rita, St. Lawrence, or Leo. If I wanted to go to any of those at that time, it would have meant taking a bus and all that, and I was probably too lazy because I could walk to Brother Rice at that time, which was about a mile or a mile and a half from our house. So that's why I chose Brother Rice. And I really didn't even think about any other alternatives, really. And it was a mile and a half, and every day we walked to school, and it was mainly everyone who lived in the neighborhood. There were quite a few of us that wound up going there, and it was a big all-boys Catholic high school. At the time, it was the second biggest all-boys Catholic high school in the country. I think we had like 2,200 boys when I was a freshman. Now it's got about 1,000 or 800, so like all schools, things have changed. But so it was a massive school, and it was a good school, good academics. It was Irish Christian Brothers, who we were all fearful of because we saw them, just they were very strict, and so everyone, it was really toeing the line. You had to wear a tie every day. Most of us wore the same tie for 4 consecutive years, big ugly ties, as ugly as you could get them, just to keep them going. And I was involved in different sports. I played a little basketball, tennis, academics. We had at that time like the National Honor Society, different things like that we did. So, just a traditional thing like that. And then when it was time to go to college, there wasn't, I don't think, like as much as today, there wasn't a lot of, you didn't consider a lot of places, or there just wasn't. It was like, well, where do you want to go? And at the time, I was kind of interested in medicine or engineering, and at the time, there was a program that was combining them both, and it was new. Way back when in 1981, it was called biomedical engineering. And I said, well, I'll try that. And it was supposed to be get an engineering degree and then keep going to medical school. And now I laugh because when we went out on all our campus visits with my daughter and my son, it seemed like about every other kid was going into biomedical engineering. But at that time, there were 30 kids in the first class that I was accepted into, and I think two of them completed the entire program, and everyone else went different paths in engineering. I became a mechanical engineer because basically after about 2 years of school, I said, "Oh, I don't need another 10 years of this." So, but it was a good decision. When I got done, or as we were getting done with school, our last semester, you were interviewing for jobs, and I had a couple of job offers, and I wanted to come back to Chicago because I was in Iowa at the time, and I got a couple job opportunities in Chicago, and one of them was with a large utility called Commonwealth Edison at the time, which was the electric utility for all of Chicago, as an engineer in a nuclear plant there. So that's how I started. And then got transferred around, or we went to different places and did different things. And somewhere along the line, I met my wife, who was also worked for Commonwealth Edison. And so that was a good decision to take that job. Because if I didn't, gosh knows. So that was probably the smartest decision I made in my life. And I worked there for from 1985 to 1999. And it was a good place to work. Though things changed after a while, it became a different company than one once was. But like I said, met my wife there, so we were both working in the same department. And we started dating after a while. And then we had to kind of keep it quiet, mainly because she didn't want to admit to anyone she was dating me. But I think that's the real reason. But probably we dated for a while, and then after about a year and a half, I think we started becoming more serious and thinking, well, maybe we should consider getting married. So it was probably 1988 at that time. I think late 88 we decided to get engaged, and when I got engaged by buying obviously a ring, but a shirt that said McIntyre's Saloon, I believe. It was an Irish shirt. And at Christmas time, I wrapped it up, the shirt, and inside of it was the ring. And this was after, I think, a couple of other times my wife may have thought she was going to get a proposal, but there were a couple dates where I think she thought it was coming. But we on Christmas, I wrapped it all up and with a number of other gifts, and she opened up the shirt and opened it up and went like that, and there went my ring flying across the room. And she said, "Oh, this is nice." And I said, well, do you see what it says on the front? And I'd like you to not only wear the shirt but have the name. And then I had to go scramble and pick up the ring and get it to her. So she, thank goodness, said yes. And we were married then in September 15th of 1990 in a little church in the city of Chicago, Queen of the Universe, which was her home church, which probably had the shortest aisle of all time, though Peggy thought it was a gigantic aisle compared to the parish I was in. Ours was probably about 3 times as large, so it was not that large of a walk down the aisle. I remember the wedding day was a beautiful day. It was about 80 degrees, sunny, and I remember her pulling up and her father backing up about 20 times to get into a spot, which was quite humorous as we watched him go back and forth trying to fit into a spot. But we got married. We had a huge reception. I think probably 350 to 400 people at the Glendora House Banquets and on Harlem Avenue and 101st and Harlem. And as people would come in line, we kept going, "Oh no, they didn't respond yes, or they said 4 and they've got 6. But it all worked out. They kept setting up tables. We had a lively wedding. Quite a few people left walking sideways with after having their traditional blue Hawaiian shots because we went to Hawaii on our honeymoon. But a really fun wedding, and like I say, probably 400 people. What else? From there, then, which was kind of interesting. Before we got married, we actually started looking at houses, and it was an excruciating process because at the time I was working probably an hour from the city, and I wanted to at least get about halfway there. And so every night after working, we would look in suburbs to buy a house. And one of the suburbs I kind of wanted was Orland Park, which is where we wound up buying a house. But at that time, it was growing. Now it's growing a lot bigger. But at that time, it was still a little rural in parts. And as we drive out every night, my wife would remind me about the skunks and how it stunk and how far it was and how dark it was and how awful. And after a long look, we decided on a house. We liked the house, we liked the neighborhood, and it was the best decision we made. Second best decision we probably made as far as that after getting married, because we've lived in the same house for 26 years now. We remodeled it extensively as children came along and built on, but we've got wonderful neighbors. It's a great neighborhood. The kids, great parish, schools, etc. So, how we decided on it, we were just kind of lucky. It fit what we were looking for and we could afford, and it was a nice area. And like I say, it was a great place to raise kids. Schools were good. I think they had friends, and always the bus stop had 40 kids on the bus stop, every morning for the kids to be out there. And hopefully tried to instill a lot of the same values I think that both of us grew up with in the Irish Catholic families with, being honest, being good, going to Mass every Sunday and sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. Just the importance of family and having fun, and we've always been able to go on vacations. I think hopefully that's one thing that everyone remembers. We've been on a lot of really neat vacations and neat spots and done a lot of neat stuff that we'd like to continue to do and make those memories, which is really important. And I guess the best piece of advice, I was given or could give is just be yourself, and everything will work out. I'm a big proponent of everything will work out if you work hard, you're honest, you're loving. Life just kind of works out. So that's it.